Okay, friends, you're welcome back to um, our conversation, the tea break with Brother Vincent. And before we lost connection with Mbe, we were talking about Mbe Nwanega's idea of Igbobia, over Nnamdi Kano's Biafra today. And he was making points, very important point about why he did not support Nnamdi Kano's IPOB. And I'm bringing him back online. So Mbe, okay, Mbe is coming back online, so we can continue with our very important discussion. Okay, glad to have you back, Mbe Nwanega. Before we lost connection in the first segment, we were talking about making a comparison between your Igbobia ideology and Kano's Biafra, and the fact that he got a lot of other people from our neighboring states in the South, where there is believed to be a spillover of people of Igbo ethnic origin. So go ahead with your point, Mbe.
Yes, sorry for the technical fault. I think I have to start getting used to this. The point I was making is that the big difference between Igbobia or Igbobia, all of the Igbobia is just, it means wherever you are, if you're Igbobia, just come. So if you're in River State, come to Igbobia. If you are in Delta, come to Igbobia. If you're I don't think there are no Igbo in Akwa Ibom. I haven't seen any Igbo on Cross River. There is a faction of Igbo communities, the old Ukwane people in Bayelsa, but just a few communities in northern Bayelsa. There is what is it called in the one in Edo? An offshoot of Ika people. An offshoot of Ika people. They have them in Edo State, just a community.
Okay.
And then even there is a lot of politics going on, petroleum politics with minority. If you look at the way the politics of petroleum has divided the Igbo among the riverine Igbos, they don't even accept they are Igbo. So I was just asking them to come. If they believe they are Igbo, they should come to Igbobia. Eventually when the economy is no longer centered on petroleum, perhaps we should start thinking of identity politics like they do in America. And then people will now be firm in confirming their ethnicity. Like people will now say, oh, we are not Ukwane, we are actually Igbo people. I can wake up tomorrow and say, look, there is a lot of difference between Nsukka and the rest of the Igbo, so I am not Igbo. If there is 1 million or 2 billion barrel of oil under Uzowane, I can say, yeah, this is our place. This is our oil, we are oil bearing, we are minorities.
Just like Governor Wike of Rivers State openly denied his Igbo roots and said he's not Igbo, has nothing to do with Igbo.
Well, my belief is that there was nothing like Igbo. There was nothing like Igbo 200 years ago. The nation we now call Igbo people, it didn't exist 200 years ago. The missionaries and the missionaries and colonialism helped to create the Igbo today, and just like the Yoruba, because there was no nation called the Igbo. When the missionaries came in, when they landed in 1867 in Onitsha, there was no Igbo. Onitsha was fighting with Ogidi. So the Onitsha were the ones calling the Ogidi people Igbo. They were looking for the missionaries couldn't find where are the Igbos. They can't find anyone. People were each village, each community was autonomous, and they see the other person as a stranger. It is only colonialism and then the missionary work that finally brought everybody together, and now we call ourselves Igbo. And we even study one language and speak the same language, and call ourselves Igbo, which is, every nation has gone through this, even the Chinese, even Americans. The people who initially started America, they were few, the United States, and it grew to a very large union. Initially, it was just a few states, less than 20. It was just 13 states that started it, but that's by the way anyway. The difference between Igbobia and Biafra is that Igbobia will be centered on being Igbo. It will be like the Jewish Republic. If you are Jew anywhere in the world, come to Israel. This is our new republic. This is our Jewish republic. Now we already have people who are in no doubt of who they are. You will not go to Ebonyi State and ask somebody, "Are you Igbo or something else?" They will not. They will not say they are Izi or they are Eza or they are the Hugo people. They know they are Igbo. If you go to Nsukka and ask some, if you go to Abia State and go to some of these people like Ohofia and Abiriba, these people, they had a different origin. They migrated from Cross River. But today they don't have any doubt that they are Igbo. They are the same. It's the same thing. So now we'll have 5 states. If something happens to Nigeria, I believe personally that Nigeria made the Igbo who they are. Just like I told you about the colonialism and the missionary. The missionaries contributed to make it before 200 years ago, even 100 years ago. We will not see one Igbo man who is in a neighboring kingdom doing trade. Today, the Igbo, they are known as tradespeople, people who can survive anywhere. But if you, in 1900, or let's take it back, 1900, the colonialism has gained ground already. So the railway is already being built, and the protection of the colonial government was there. If you take it back to 1860, you will not find an Igbo man in Kano. You will not find an Igbo man in Lokoja. When Baike's ship landed in Ida, there was no Igbo man in Ida. There was no Igbo man in Lokoja. There was no Igbo man anywhere. You will see in Nsukka man in Onitsha. You will see an Abiriba man in Lagos in just 150 years ago.
Wow.
So. Of course, this is historical fact, you know. But now
that's quite a bit of history.
But when you look at it, now, our experience, our colonial experience, and the missionary experience from our experience with Christian missionaries, turned us into who we are today. If people should know this, and then people should act on this. This is our history. Our history is not complete without colonialism. It's not complete without our contact with missionaries. That we can speak the same common language today is because the missionaries devised orthography for it. And then we are all speak. Before, I cannot call myself an Igbo man. So that is what nobody, if people, you don't see, now we have a nationalism built on this strength and experience. It happened with the Kikuyu in Kenya. So what I was saying is that the difference between my Igbobia and Nnamdi Kanu's Biafra is that Igbobia is going to be an Igbo republic. It's not going to ask people, it's not going to ask Ijo people to come and join us. If we want a confederation, yes, we can have a confederation. Then we say, okay, we need to have a confederation, join Ijo and other people. But then, we are not the ones who are going to initiate this. We're already going to be standing on our own. What is wrong with Igbo people are more than 30 million. They are more than the population of Australia. They are 3 times bigger than the population of Sweden. Sweden is 10 million. We have about 35 million Igbo, my rough estimate. So why will 35 million people be asking 2 million people to come and help them, build a republic?
Yeah, but many, I'm sure that outreach was based on the fact that many people think the Igbo that we know today in these 5 states would be landlocked. How about that argument about the Igbo being landlocked?
There's one thing about being landlocked. Austria is landlocked. Switzerland is double landlocked. It's landlocked within another landlocked country. Switzerland. Ethiopia is landlocked. So what is this about being landlocked? I don't see the arguments about being landlocked is childish. Switzerland is doing better than 100 countries with access to the sea. And so is Austria. Austria and Germany, they speak the same language. Austria is not saying that they want to join Germany because they will be landlocked if they remain Austria.
Yeah, but some say that Igbo being surrounded by supposedly hostile neighbors, the hostile neighbors surrounding the Igbo might not give them easy access to the maybe facilities that will take them to the water, to the ocean, to maybe other facilities, the air, what's it called?
See,
I can't remember what it's called now.
Brother, that argument also is flawed, you know.
Okay.
It is flawed because the argument is flawed because there is a national convention on landlocked countries. There's an international convention governing countries being landlocked. It's not within Ethiopia. Ethiopia just built a rail from Djibouti. So why do we say that these are hostile countries? So if they are hostile countries, we know they are hostile. They will be surrounded by hostile countries. So why are we bringing the hostile countries to join in the republic? Would it be worse? If we are now bringing them, we don't want them to be on their own. We want to bring them in Biafra. Does that solve the situation?
That's the argument of people who do not support Kano's amalgamation of all these ethnic groups. You, in your own case, yours is a different argument. These other people are arguing that there shouldn't be anything like Biafra in any case, or even an Igbo republic because of the hostile countries are surrounding them whenever it comes. I understand your argument, and maybe in another occasion we'll still explore this further because you're taking us down a long road of history, which is very important. We'll need to explore this later. But let's look at the things, the feeding pipe to this Kano's agitation. Some have said that it is the inability of Southeastern political leaders to speak strongly with one voice against the incursion of terrorist headsmen, you know, parading themselves as headsmen, coming into, making incursion into our space in the Southeast. Do you agree with these people?
No, I don't agree. I don't agree because Southeast is the safest part of Nigeria. When you look at the data of this herdsmen violence,
for now,
the only time it has always been so. From the time this thing started, from the time this security, I have the data. I have the data with me. So from the time we started having these challenges about this, the Fulani herdsmen themselves, they have struck only a couple of times in the Southeast. I can't say that it's only, because people will normally misunderstand it. They've struck twice, majorly twice in the Southeast. I know they've been to Uzuwani about 4 times. They already killed some people under Chime, under Goodluck Jonathan. But the major time was the Nimbo incident in April 2016, and the current one they now did in Ebonyi State. They have majorly centered in the North Central and even the Southwest. That is what they once kidnapped Olufalaye. What's the name? He said Ajasin Olufalaye.
Olufalaye, yeah.
So Olufalaye was once the incident of herdsmen. My position is that the Southeast somehow is insulated from this thing. But just like the situation was in the early 60s, we are now trying to carry the problem of Nigeria on our heads. Southeast don't have much incident with herdsmen. The only thing the governors are doing their job under the Constitution of Nigeria. Some of the Southeast have produced the best governor in Nigeria since 1999. Peter Obi is his name.
To date?
So I can't, till date, tell me which other governor has done better than Peter Obi since 1999 in Nigeria?
Oh, well, Peter Obi's record is outstanding. But today there is, though we're not measuring the performance of the governors at the moment. I'm looking at the inability, or let me call it the docility of the Southeastern political leaders over the perceived injustice of their people, on their people by President Buhari's government.
see, this is politics. We don't, there's nothing the Southeast people are suffering that Nigerians are not suffering. Just, can you name some of the few things Nigerians, Southeast people are, suffering individually that Nigerians are not like going through? Is there something the Southeast people are not going through with the rest of Nigerians? Is this something peculiar to Southeast people?
Not exactly, but many would argue that if an Igbo man were made the chief of army staff, for instance, just like what we saw when we had Ihejirika as the chief of army staff, they recorded a lot of success in the fight against terrorism, Boko Haram, unlike what we have today. You have Northerners as heads, chief of army staff, chief of all the security and paramilitary institutions in the country, and yet the security is as bad as it is. Some would argue that if we had Igbo people or competent people from the South that were not products of, quota system, that the situation would be different. You can see when Obasanjo wanted to fix the economy, he got Igbo people. Ordinarily, a typical Nigerian president would not have taken that path to have someone like Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, Ezekwesili, Soludo, Akunyele, all people of from the Southeast in one government, managing the key portfolios of that government, which is why he recorded the success he did.
Well, Obasanjo is a different man. Obasanjo is someone who is, his idea of Nigeria is different from Buhari. Buhari is, this is all politics. What Buhari is doing now is affecting the Igbo as well as the Yoruba, as well as the minorities in the north. Okay. So it's not entirely, he's not entirely against the Igbo. He's just showing his parochial mindedness. You know, Buhari is not, he's a closed-minded person. He's a closed-minded leader. He will see incompetence, and based on this incompetence, this person is a Muslim from my area, then he will want to empower the. This is small-mindedness. We are dealing with this small-mindedness as Nigerians. We're not dealing with this as Igbo. We're not dealing with Buhari as it's nothing between Igbo and Buhari. It's a Nigerian versus Buhari thing. It's even worse for his own people, Buhari's people.
Yeah, which is why a lot of people want out. For instance, the Oduduwa guys are, calling for, they want to be on their own. Kano and other like-minded people want to be on their own because they can no longer go ahead with this Nigeria under President Buhari. Why do you, the Southeastern leaders are not saying anything as one? That is my worry. I remember when the Southwestern governors came together to speak in one voice against the growing insecurity in the land. Why are our people not talking? Considering that we're hearing that our forests have been occupied already by the Fulani herdsmen.
Brother, this is just what you're saying. You're just reciting this propaganda. You're reciting this IPOB propaganda. You see, you know what? Our people have spoken many times, more than any other people in Nigeria. The governors came together, all political, religious, and cultural leaders in Igbo land. They came together on July 2nd, 2017. And they said that not one single person said a different thing. They all said that we believe in Nigeria. We want a restructured Nigeria. We want a Nigeria that is politically restructured. This is the date. All of them met in Enugu, all political leaders from the Southeast, all religious leaders from the Southeast, all cultural leaders were there. Mm-hmm. So how do people speak again? Already our people are speaking.
That's just one event. If they speak in 2017 and don't speak again, does it mean where is the action? And Buhari is not someone that acts based on the fact that you've spoken. There's supposed to be some consistency in this speaking.
The governors were elected under the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. they have sworn to defend our constitution. That they were elected on that basis alone. They are not a propaganda outfit like IPOB. Brother, I need to go. My battery is dead already. You know, we can do this another time. But listen, this thing now, the governors are governors of a state in Nigeria. They are not governor of a non-existent Biafra or like an organization like Kano. They are governors with constitutional rights as governors. They have been speaking. Look at what Umahi said about the killing in Ebonyi 2 days ago. That is how a governor speaks. That is how a governor behaves. The current arrangement we have in Nigeria will not allow a governor to go beyond what he's doing now.
Are you saying that what the Ondo State governor did is unconstitutional?
What did he do?
Governor Akeredolu, when he told his people to, first of all, the Amoteku they formed, then again, the fact that he told his people to always sing the Oduduwa anthem anytime they are at school.
Well, that I have not seen that. I've not seen where that. I'm not sure about this question. But when did the man send them Oduduwa anthem?
Yes.
He told them to sing Oduduwa anthem.
He endorsed it. Yes.
So what has that endorsement got to do with the security of his people? What value is that? Of what value is that saying?
It's been interpreted in different quarters as a subtle call for Yoruba nationalism.
Well, we have had people who said more than that. First of all, Oduduwa anthem is a different thing. Oduduwa anthem, if you want to show Igbo nationalism, I know a lot of P2B once said something more. I don't want to go about it. My battery is 10% less.
Well, you said your battery is low. We will have to reschedule this conversation and then do exhaustive justice to the pending questions that we have here. I want to thank you very much, Mbenwanega, also known as Chika Momed, or Chika Omed, aka Mbenwanega, for sparing time from work, your busy schedule, to talk with us. We'll have this conversation again and look forward to having a better, seamless moment during the time. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Thank you. Good to have you. Thank you for having me.
Okay.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Yeah.